I always believed I was one of the reasonable ones. You know the type. The kind of woman who reads contracts twice, color codes her calendar, says no worries at work, even when there absolutely are worries. I thought that made me mature, grounded, immune to chaos. Turns out, it made me a target. Eric and I had just landed back in Chicago after 2 weeks in Florida, our first real vacation in 3 years. I was sunburned, bloated from airport snacks, and dreaming of my own bed like it was a religious experience. All I wanted was a hot shower, no talking, and a quiet scroll through my emails with a glass of Pinot. Instead, we pulled up to our townhouse and found a car in our assigned spot. An unfamiliar blue SUV, windows cracked, baby toys on the back seat. Eric scratched his head like that explained anything. Maybe your neighbor has a guest? My neighbor doesn't have kids, I muttered, and that's my damn spot. I climbed out of the rideshare and walked up to our front door. The moment I tried the key, I knew something was off. The lock had been changed. I stared at it, then at Eric, then back again. Tell me this is a joke, I said quietly. Before he could answer, the door swung open from the inside. A young woman, maybe 30, stood there in a flowy cardigan, holding a sleepy toddler in one arm and a bottle of lavender oil in the other. Her eyes lit up. "Oh, you must be Natalie." "I am," I said, voice flat. "I'm Lisa. Judith told us you'd be back tomorrow. She said you were in Florida and wouldn't mind us staying here just a few days longer, for wellness. This place has such calming energy." My body went cold. "For wellness," I repeated, slowly, like the phrase might start to make sense if I gave it time. Lisa smiled, seemingly oblivious. "Judith said this is her son's place, but that you're close and you're super into sustainability and minimalism. She said it'd be okay." Eric coughed beside me. I turned. "Eric?" I said, so evenly it was practically a hiss. "Is there something you forgot to mention?" He shifted his weight from foot to foot. "Look, Mom said—" Of course she did. Judith had always had a flair for the delusional, a self-proclaimed eco-matriarch. She ran her own Instagram page with captions like, "Compost is community and owning is oppressing." I always smiled through her lectures and politely refused her kombucha, thinking that tolerating her weirdness was a small price to pay for peace. Apparently, that tolerance was now being cashed in like a check. Lisa stepped back. "Do you want to come in?" I didn't answer. I looked past her, into my living room, where a yoga mat and diffuser had taken the place of my favorite reading chair. My bookshelf was covered in macrame. The couch had throw pillows with words like breathe and unlearn. There was no sign of my belongings. I took a long breath. "Eric, where's my stuff?" "They're fine," he said too quickly. "In the garage. Mom had the movers box them up." "She what?" Lisa flinched. Her toddler whimpered. I stepped back from the door. "I'm not doing this right now," I said. My voice was trembling, but not from panic, from clarity. "Let's go." Eric blinked. "Go where?" "I don't know, but if we don't leave, I'm going to commit a felony." We drove in silence. He didn't ask where I wanted to go, and I didn't offer. Eventually, we ended up in the Target parking lot off I-55, sitting in the car under that dull Midwest gray. Eric cleared his throat. "Look, it's not permanent. She just thought Lisa and her kid needed a break. Their apartment has mold or something, and she said we weren't using the place anyway." "I own that house," I snapped. "It's in my name." "She knows that." "Does she?" I turned and stared at him. Really looked. His face was blank, like always. Agreeable, passive, just there. I used to find that soothing. Now it felt like drowning beside a smiling lifeguard. "I just thought, he mumbled. "You always talk about decluttering." "I meant emotional baggage, Eric. Not my effing living room." By the time we got to Judith's property, it was nearly sunset. She greeted us like nothing was wrong, wearing hiking boots, cargo shorts, and a shirt that read, "Deconsume your life." "Oh, darlings, you're early," she beamed. "Lisa said you seemed surprised. That girl needs boundaries. I only meant for her to stay till Friday." I walked past her into the yard. The daca she had offered us. A 1970s trailer set back behind her house, half covered in ivy and moss. There was a compost toilet 15 feet away and what looked like a makeshift solar panel rig nailed to a tree. "This is not fit for people," I said. "Oh, come on," Judith chirped. "It's character building. You're always at your computer. This will reconnect you to your rhythms. You'll feel better out here." Eric just stood there, eyes fixed on the gravel. I turned to him. "You're okay with this?" He shrugged. "It's just temporary." "I bet you'll say that at my funeral, too." Judith laughed like I'd made a joke. "You millennials, always so fragile about comfort. Your generation never learned to rough it. We used to spend summers out here with no AC and no complaints. Didn't kill us." "It didn't kill you," I muttered. "But maybe it did something worse." That was the moment I should have screamed. Called the cops, sued everyone in the goddamn family. Instead, I nodded. "Fine," I said. "We'll stay." Judith blinked. "Really?" "Sure." Because now I understood. This wasn't an accident. It was a test. A power play, and I'd play along. But on my terms. Inside the trailer that night, I opened my laptop, hotspot from my phone, and started pulling records. Judith had used her own Zelle for the utilities donation Lisa had paid. I requested the neighborhood's HOA documentation. I opened a blank spreadsheet. I wasn't going to win this with yelling. I was going to win with paper, with code, with receipts. Because I may have looked like a woman living in a moldy trailer. But in a few weeks, Judith was going to know what it felt like to lose everything she thought she controlled. The first night in the trailer, I barely slept. The place groaned like it had secrets, metallic creaks in the ceiling, strange thumps from the warped floorboards, and the ever-present buzz of mosquitoes the size of paper clips. At one point, something scurried across the windowsill. I didn't ask what. Eric, somehow, snored through all of it. Of course. By sunrise, I was at the makeshift picnic table behind the trailer, sipping coffee I brewed over a portable stove I found under the sink. Judith walked by on her way to her herb garden, dressed like she was starring in a Patagonia commercial. She waved cheerfully. "Doesn't this feel better than your little digital cage?" I forced a smile. "I feel detoxed already." What I actually felt was clarity. Because while Judith cultivated kale and superiority, I was cultivating something else. Proof. The next few days, I worked quietly, methodically. From my laptop, I downloaded a month's worth of property access logs from the smart lock company I'd set up when I bought the place. I had Judith's email tied to a temporary guest access code, and she'd used it over 24 times. The system time-stamped every entry. I compiled screenshots, call logs, transaction records. On day 4, I met with someone who would become my unexpected ace. Susan Kaplan, Judith's ex-best friend. They'd fallen out a year earlier over a failed attempt to start a community garden. Judith had raised money from neighbors for a greenhouse, pocketed most of it under the guise of transport fees, and then ghosted Susan when she asked for receipts. Susan still hadn't forgiven her. Judith always liked to pretend she was some visionary, she told me over coffee at a Panera. But really, she's just good at hiding behind other people's work. Or stealing it. She handed me a flash drive. She used to brag about renting other people's properties, mostly family, said it was a reclamation of space from capitalist inertia. Whatever the hell that means. I opened the files later that night. Voice memos, screenshots of texts with tenants. One message to a past renter read, "Don't worry about paperwork. It's just my daughter-in-law's name on the deed. We're all one family." That phrase stuck in my head like a splinter. Just my daughter-in-law's name. Just. Like I was an asterisk. Eric, meanwhile, was getting twitchy. His just temporary mantra began to unravel every time he hit his head on the trailer door frame or stepped on a beetle the size of a grape. "I don't get why you're making this harder than it needs to be," he said one night, frustrated. "You could have just told Mom no." I did. For 3 years. Politely, quietly, and it never mattered. He rolled his eyes. "It's not like she's profiting off you." "Then explain the Venmo transfers marked rental thank you." His mouth opened, then shut. I didn't need his confession. I already had Judith's. That night, I drafted an email to the local HOA board, copying in 2 members I knew personally from the brief time I'd served on the architecture committee. I attached documentation of unlicensed rental activity, included time-stamped access logs, and quoted lines from the HOA charter forbidding short-term occupancy without written owner consent. I didn't send it. Not yet. The next morning, Judith appeared outside the trailer holding a bundle of hand-picked rosemary. "Just bringing you a little grounding energy," she said sweetly. I stared at the sprigs. "Is this what you give people after you colonize their living room?" Her smile didn't falter. "Oh, come now. You're overreacting. Lisa and her little girl needed sanctuary. You have so much. They had so little. It's the right thing to do. And stealing my keys? Locking me out of my own home? That's community care?" She huffed. "You millennials are so obsessed with property lines and fences. My generation knew how to share." "Your generation also tanked the housing market," I snapped. "So forgive me if I'm protective of the one thing I worked my ass off to afford." She shook her head, all disappointed condescension. "I'm not your enemy, Natalie." "Then why do you keep acting like one?" She dropped the herbs at my feet and walked off, muttering something about ingratitude and ego. I watched her disappear into the vegetable beds, her figure swallowed by the weeds of her own righteousness. 2 nights later, I got a text from Lisa. "Hey, hope you don't mind me reaching out. I just found out you're the actual owner of the place. I had no idea." Judith made it sound like it was hers. "I'm so sorry." I paused, and then I called her. She was apologetic, mortified. Said Judith claimed it was her family home and that I hadn't been using it much. Lisa had only paid for utilities in cash, and even that felt sketchy in hindsight. "Would you be willing to put that in writing?" I asked. "I'll do better," she said. "I have the text messages." She forwarded them 5 minutes later. In one, Judith wrote, "Don't worry, Natalie doesn't mind. She's very go with the flow. Besides, it's all in the family. My son's wife is practically me." That was it. The matchstick. I pulled up the HOA draft again, attached Lisa's screenshots. Then I sent a second email to the IRS tip line. 3 days later, I got a call. A formal complaint had been opened. HOA officers were preparing an on-site inspection. IRS was reviewing unreported rental activity. I waited for the fallout. I didn't have to wait long. It arrived on a Sunday afternoon during Judith's monthly wellness brunch with her local permaculture group. She was just beginning her speech on reclaiming intentional space when 2 HOA board members showed up at her front steps with clipboards and cameras. Susan was there too. I watched from the edge of the driveway as Judith's voice faltered, her face draining as they began asking about tenant logs and subletting permissions. I didn't interrupt. I didn't need to. She'd done it all herself. The day after the HOA confrontation, Judith stopped making eye contact. She stayed indoors, shades drawn, skipping her morning garden routines and wellness live streams. Susan had done her job. Half the local Facebook group already knew that Mother Gaia Judith had been cited for unlicensed rentals, lying to tenants, and misrepresenting property ownership. Her comment section went silent. That was the real punishment. I spent the day boxing up our things from the trailer, careful and methodical, like erasing evidence of someone else's fantasy. That evening, Eric knocked lightly on the flimsy trailer door before stepping in, looking like a kid sent to fetch the belt he was about to get spanked with. "Want help with the bags?" I didn't look up. "No." He stood awkwardly by the edge of the kitchenette. "She's humiliated." "Good," I said. "She earned it." Eric exhaled and sat across from me. "She didn't mean to—" I raised my hand. Don't finish that sentence. I know exactly what she meant. She meant to take something that wasn't hers and hope I'd be too polite to stop her." He frowned, rubbed the bridge of his nose. "You didn't have to go nuclear." I finally looked at him. "You're right. I could have just called the cops the day we landed, had Lisa and her daughter removed in front of the neighbors. But I didn't. You know why?" He didn't answer. because I wanted to understand how deep this rot went. And I wanted to be sure that when I cut it out, it stayed gone. Eric looked down at his hands. So that's it? You're done? I nodded. I already was. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. He was quiet for a long time. Then, she never liked that the house was in your name. I think it made her feel boxed out. Good, I said again, this time sharper. That box is called a boundary, Eric. And if you weren't so busy being her son, you might have remembered you're also my husband. Something in his posture collapsed. I let the silence hang. Then I added calmly, I have a lawyer. The paperwork's already in motion. You'll get served next week. He didn't argue. He didn't cry. And that was worse. Because if there's one thing more painful than betrayal, it's discovering the person who betrayed you isn't even sorry, just tired. The night I moved back into my home, I unlocked the door myself. Same key. Same smooth turn. Same familiar click. Lisa had already cleared out. She'd left a small note on the kitchen counter with a Starbucks gift card and a heartfelt apology. Her handwriting was tight and awkward. I believed her. I really did. Thank you for not turning this into a war. I hope you make this place feel like yours again. I smiled. I already had. I walked from room to room slowly, letting each object remember me. The way the light hit the dining chairs at sunset. The angle of the blinds that had been slightly off since I installed them too fast. My blanket, folded in a shape I never use. Someone else's shape. It didn't matter. I was home now, alone, and I wasn't afraid of it. A week passed. Eric didn't call. Judith didn't show up. Susan sent me screenshots of Judith's attempt at damage control online. One comment said, "Capitalist sabotage from within the family." Another post had been flagged for misinformation. I laughed until my stomach hurt. Then came the letter. No return address, just my name in big loopy cursive. Inside, one line. No greeting, no signature. I hope you're proud of what you did. I folded the paper, walked to the backyard, and burned it in the fire pit. Not out of rage, not even satisfaction. Just to let it go. I watched the paper curl and blacken, the words lifting into ash, and thought, yes, I'm proud. Not because I humiliated her, not because I won, but because for the first time in years, I didn't let someone steal from me under the disguise of love. I didn't minimize, I didn't rationalize, I didn't let comfort talk me out of truth. And that felt like breathing again. One morning, I sat by the window in my reading chair. The same chair I dreamed about during that miserable trailer week when the air reeked of mildew and Judith's voice hovered like mold in my lungs. It was quiet now. No buzzing, no rustling, no one stomping in uninvited. Just me. Same light. Same cup of coffee. But everything had changed. I scrolled through my phone and archived the final email thread with my divorce lawyer. Then I opened Zillow, not to look for a new place, but to update the listing on Judith's address. Not for rent, not for sale, just bookmarked. A silent reminder of what I walked away from and why. I didn't tell her I was done. I didn't need to. Sometimes the loudest thing you can say is nothing at all. And I'd said enough. Now, the silence was mine, and for once, it didn't mean surrender. It meant freedom.